thanks to everybody that's here. Hopefully a few more folks will join in. I'm glad that we have a chance to do this. As most of us know, next year will be the 30th anniversary of the Catalyst Fund. And in thinking about that, we thought we'd spend a little bit of time reviewing, revisiting, and renewing. This is also in response to some of our concerns that for the last couple of years, mostly due to scheduling issues, we haven't really heard the results. We haven't heard a report about the results of the Catalyst grants that we've made. So we thought we'd try to do something a little meta this time. There's been a wonderful array of people who've put together a program, a video that we'll see in a little bit. We will also have time later on for some questions and answers, because this isn't just about publicity, this is about analysis as we look forward to thinking about what we want to do with our fund, with Catalyst Fund. That we're responsible for. We've had some steering committee discussions along these lines, and this is open now to all of us to enjoy. So I won't say sit back, I'd say open our eyes, open our ears. Let's learn as much as we can so that we can have a profitable discussion at the end of the presentation. So Betty Ann, if you can lead us on from here, I would welcome, assuming that your computer system works reasonably well, I would welcome you to take over.
Thank you, Terry. I'll give it a try. Hopefully everyone can understand me. Cut me off and I'll hand it over to someone. I wanted to.
Betty Ann, volume is very intermittently interrupted.
Okay, I can try the volume up a little bit. Is that better?
What's happening, I think, is that we hear you for about the first half of what you say, and then it just drops completely.
Okay.
But then it comes back, and it's happening to at least 3 people.
All right, Terry, if you have my notes in front of you.
I do.
I will let you carry on, and I will try to get a better connection.
Okay, as long as as long as you try to come back and everybody can hear me. And if anybody can't hear me, then you put a note in the chat or something like that. First thing that we want to do is we want to thank everybody for the efforts that have led to tonight. There's quite a number of people who have done important and significant and useful things that have led us to the presentation that we're about to see. So certainly Amanda and Scott Aronson have been, and Amanda, I know you're here. I wonder if Scott is as well. We're thrilled with the work that you've done, and we thank you. Again, similarly, Amy Peltier, Bob White, and we hope to hear from Bob. You don't know this, Bob, but we hope to hear from you a little bit later as well. Tom Zeleznak, I didn't get that right, did I, Tom?
You got it.
Okay, good. As the senior communications officer, has been very instrumental in producing the document that we're going to be seeing, along with Brad Drazen, Tara Sunday, and all of the grantees. Let's not forget them, all of the grantees who have responded and were willing to participate in this. So there's a lot of thank yous that go around to get us to the point where we are right now. Now, we all know that our giving circle, our Catalyst Fund giving circle, has 2 missions. We're a mission-driven organization, and we have 2 missions. One of those missions is educational, where we learn about our community and particularly about the actors who are doing things to improve our community. And the second part of the mission is to fund some of these programs, especially to fund them when we think that they can do something that is catalytic, that is advantageous, that is groundbreaking. There's a whole host of what the ideas behind the word catalytic can be. And those are the 2 things that we're looking for always in our grant making. But we really, for the last few years, we haven't found out exactly how well we've done with our efforts. So we do want to thank all of us, basically, who've contributed the amount of money over the last 30 years that has produced the situation that we're in right now with the Catalyst Fund. We're in a very healthy place. When Catalyst first began, I don't know how expensive it was to join. but I do know that our grant for the first couple of years was about $10,000 a year for those first couple of years. We are now at the point where we have a fund, endowed fund of $1.9 million. So as we join each year and give our money, we can produce grants that are in excess of the amount of money that we contribute each year, which is really healthy. We have given out 68 grants totaling more than $1.1 million. We have collected, actually, I don't know how much we've collected. Oh, yes, I do. We've collected $1.4 million in that 30 years. But we have, thanks to our efforts, and to be perfectly honest, thanks to the brilliant management of people in the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, we have a fund balance right now of $1.9 million. This year, we expect to be giving out a grant or grants in excess of $60,000, which is a wonderful place for us to be. So we have done wonderful things. We hope to continue to do wonderful things. And to that end, as we embark on our 30th anniversary, we want to take some time and look back and think seriously about the kinds of grants that we've made, their levels of success, their levels of importance. The steering committee and particularly Bob White has put together a list of rubrics, or at least ideas, categories for us to be thinking about. And I'm going to ask Bob, this is a warning, Bob, I'm going to ask Bob to talk about that after we've seen the video presentation. So we have invited in past years people to report back to us about the success or failure of their, not failure, but the success of what they've done with the money that we've granted to them. We haven't done that in the past couple of years. It has been difficult to do. It interrupts our normal cycle. And of course, we all know that for the last 2 years, we've had an entirely interrupted schedule due to the COVID crisis. So we're rethinking all of that, and we're looking back in order to analyze and look forward. And with that said, I want to turn it over to Tom and the presentation. If Tom, you can explain it and take over, I would appreciate it greatly.
Sure. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. We have about a 12-minute video that is an overview of our grants from 2012 to 2020. Pretty much one a year except for 2014. Tara Sunday, my colleague, reached out to a bunch of grantees that we had given grants to in the past, and they wrote us back each with a couple paragraphs about what happened with the grants and what made them catalytic. And we combined that into a video. I will post the link to this. I'll post it on YouTube tomorrow. So if anybody wants to go back and watch it, they can do so. But this is just kind of an overview of everything. And, you know, there's much more to it, but hopefully this will give you a general idea of what's been going on. So I'm going to try to share it. And if there's any errors or you can't hear or anything, you know, please write in the chat or let me know. Here we go.
We often have times and we have discussions within Catalyst as members about what makes it catalytic, and it's different for everybody. When I think of a catalytic grant, I think about something that either continues big work that's already been started or actually allows someone to start something or to try something that they think is going to work in the community, but no one else has had the trust in them to allow them to give it a shot.
I think the idea of a grant being catalytic is multi-layered. It's got an element of newness to it. It's got a little element of risk to it. It's offering an organization an opportunity to do something that they otherwise couldn't. And I think it's also part about being accountable too. I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you my results. And even if, you know, it's not what we expected, we learned something from that.
It's a good question to wrestle with. I think we certainly are way beyond just giving money to organizations, good organizations, just to fund them.
People do care very much about what happens and are curious more than anything to know what happens after a grant is is awarded. So the Hartford Foundation follows up very thoroughly on that, but the Catalyst members do get very curious about what happened.
Since 1993, members of the Catalyst Endowment Fund have awarded 68 grants totaling $1.1 million to nonprofits serving Greater Hartford. We reached out to some of these grantees to find out what happened with their programs, what they learned, and whether the grants were truly catalytic. Here's what we found out. COBA's Girls Rise program continues to this day. They've been able to maintain the female assistant coaching position that began with the Catalyst grant. They've also hired a mentoring coordinator with new funding. Several young women from this year's program competed at the national level, winning 4 silver medals, 1 national title, and a 4th place ranking at the U.S. National Championships. COBA continually recruits to maintain a minimum of 30 female boxers. That's 10 times more than the national average of 3. There were a few lessons learned from this process. First, a part-time coordinator was insufficient to manage the daily demands of the program. They hope to create a full-time position. Secondly, initiating a formal mentoring program takes at least a year with a dedicated staff person in place. Finally, when properly publicized, there is a significant demand for girls' programming in the world of amateur boxing, especially when complemented with wraparound efforts such as life coaching, mentoring, and gender-specific life skills.
Initially, the youth did not want to participate in the program, but once they got to know the Peace Builders, they didn't want the classes to end. We faced some challenges with sharing information and learning when kids were actually being released. Subsequently, what we've done is had a series of meetings with the detention centers in order to exchange data. We have also been able to work with these kids in the once they've been released from our program. So they have been enrolled in case management efforts with our Peace Builders, but we also have them enrolled in all the other components, which means that they're getting mental health supports, that they're getting referrals to education and connecting back to education when they need it. And most importantly, they're doing employment opportunities. Thanks to the Catalyst program, this part of our Navigate program will be here forever. That's the goal, that we keep it there forever, because we've found a synergy. Not only does it help the youth as they're navigating their way back into their environments, their neighborhoods, but it also helps with the detention center because they're getting life skills from people that the kids want to be with and that they trust and who have had similar experiences to them.
The projects funded by Catalyst's grant to NINA created 2 new affordable homes, as well as 2 new affordable rental units. Volunteers helped with interior demolition, hanging drywall, and painting. The house at 115 Sigourney Street sold to a single mom who already lived in Asylum Hill and works for a nonprofit in the neighborhood. The building at 117 Sigourney Street is an owner-occupied 3-family home. The buyers are longtime Hartford residents. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic forced NINA to suspend its volunteer program due to health concerns. They look forward to rebooting the program when it's safe to do so. With this grant, Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology was able to hire a young woman of color from East Hartford as a lead for the program. She connected with a population of women ages 18 to 29 from low-income households, presenting advanced manufacturing as a career for the creative, non-traditional woman of the future. She also helped update the program's marketing to reflect this audience. The Catalyst Grant was a springboard for the center's work in recruiting women of color into advanced manufacturing. They made connections with local organizations, placed women in manufacturing jobs, and even acquired new funding based on the success of the program.
Hello, this is Susie DeVitro giving a quick update on our Catalyst grant with Interval House. What was truly catalytic about this grant was that we were able to develop a system where children that are residing at Interval House, which is the domestic violence shelter in Hartford, can be assessed using evidence-based tools and then referred directly to the Institute of Living. So we were able to develop a referral system for them. We're also able to position advocates to have the engaging conversations about clients and their children's behavioral health needs in ways that are really empowering for both the client and the advocate. We learned a lot from this project. We learned of this incredible burden of behavioral health needs for women and their children accessing domestic violence services. And we also learned that we can actually do quite a bit when we work together with Children's Hospital and a domestic violence safe house and a behavioral health facility. So now that they have their referral mechanisms in place, they are still continuing to see clients from the Interval House. Thank you.
The Moms Club and Kids Club programs funded by the Catalyst Grant help mothers and their children connect as families away from their traumatic environment. The staff who work to attain this grant are no longer with the organization, but we followed up with Interval House President and CEO Mary Jane Foster, who spoke with longtime staff members to get a sense of the program's impact. They say the program achieved a roughly 80% completion rate and had a positive impact on those who participated. Unfortunately, the program was discontinued due to a lack of funding. However, it informs the organization's work to this day. Catalyst's grant to support Moving Matters allowed the program to expand from 1 grade to 3 grades. Eventually, the program would expand even further. It can be difficult to quantify the value of an arts-based program, but teachers closest to the Moving Matters program were adamant about its impact. Teachers noted that the social and emotional learning was especially impactful. This would become vital during the pandemic, as social and emotional learning has become a critical component of Hartford Public Schools' strategy for mitigating pandemic trauma and learning deficits. Moving Matters is now in its 27th year. The Chrysalis Center's veteran program continued for 6 years after the Catalyst Grant. The Catalyst funds were used to help with employment, but in doing so, it helped to identify the critical relationship between housing and job placement. Many veterans had severe mental health or addiction challenges, which prevented them from maintaining stable housing, which in turn made gaining and keeping employment difficult. Chrysalis went on to become one of the largest veterans housing developers in Connecticut. In 2015, they were instrumental to ending veterans homelessness in the state. According to Chrysalis, none of this would have happened without the funds.
Is the project that we're investing in going to make a catalytic difference in the issue that we're focusing on for the year? That's something that I always try to keep in mind, and that I think Hartford Foundation staff is really good at remembering, saying like, is this catalytic?
There are some groups that we've observed as they've presented to us and helped educate us, and we've identified that we are their budget for some of them, and some of them that is it, and this is going to be the start of something that they're trying to grow and develop. Others were a piece of a bigger project.
These issues play out in each of our lives in different ways, so it's all of our duty to get involved and play a role in shaping the change that could affect it.
I would say to the Catalyst members that I think it's such a great opportunity for organizations like Compass to have the opportunity to dream and create something and have people support them.
Okay. Like I said, I know there's a lot of grants to cover and a lot of information, so we'll send you all a link tomorrow. And if anybody wants to go back and look at that, you'll be able to. And I apologize if it was going in and out for some people. Hopefully once I went off video, it made it a little bit better. But hope you enjoyed, and I'll turn it back to Terry.
Tom, stay on because I think people may have some questions for you. You know, I would note, I mean, I start off with a question, to be honest with you, but everybody else can get your questions as well. What are the plans for this this piece? By the way, not that it's, I'm the only one that can say anything here. I was very moved by, in fact, I found myself tearing up thinking about some of what you presented. So I found it to be a very powerful piece, and I hope we have some important plans to utilize this this thing. Do you have? Can you tell me what your hopes are?
My plan was to show it here, and I didn't have a plan beyond that. But Betty Ann has probably thought it through more than I have. I would say we also have, like I said, there's a lot more information that the nonprofits provided, and my colleague Tara and Betty Ann, they worked to get that. So there's other information and answers to questions that didn't appear in the video. And so, you know, maybe that's something we can share as well, but I defer to Betty Ann on all that.
Terry, if I could jump in.
Yeah, we all defer to Betty Ann.
Always.
I hope you can hear me a little bit better now. But if I could try to jump in, I want to really thank Tom then to develop this video presentation. First of all, it's not easy to gather information from grantees years after a grant is made. And secondly, as you can imagine, it came in all different forms, from photographs to video clips to audio, excuse me. And Tom really did a great job of putting it together. This was really a one-time effort. We've never done this in the past. We had often invited a prior grantee to come present the following year at a meeting. But because we haven't done that in a few years, we thought we would try to put together to share some of the impact. Of course, it doesn't give you all the detail. It doesn't tell you exactly what kind of impact was made into the community or whether the program, how many people the program reached or any of that, but it does reach our hearts, and it does speak to us, showing that we are reaching people in the community. So with this, at the very least, we are going to send it out to all Catalyst members, whether or not they were able to attend tonight, so that everyone can benefit. We will certainly have it posted on our website in different places. But beyond that, we don't know yet, Terry, what we're going to do with it. But it is a great piece. And I wanted to take the time to thank Tom for putting it together, but also our Catalyst members, Scott and Amanda and Amy and Bob, who all came together and recorded pieces of it. So thank you. I'm going to turn it back to Terry now to kind of facilitate a little conversation and listen to your feedback. And then we may tailor that conversation a little bit about around how we can measure the impact and decide or determine whether these grants are in fact catalytic in the community.
So I would invite folks with thoughts or questions of anybody that's here to utilize the raise your hand function so that you go to the head of the line and I can see you, and we'll try to make sure that we get through everybody in order. So first, some reactions, some thoughts about what you experienced or felt about this this presentation. Does everybody know how to use the raise your hand function? Go down and look at reactions, and at the bottom of reactions, there's a raise your hand. Okay, good. I see some of us have gotten it. So David, if you would unmute yourself and go ahead.
Yes, I have a few questions. One is that noticing that you've got about 10-year span, you only have 8 responses. How many grants have we given over that 10 years that did not respond? The second one is, I would suggest that in what you're saying is that you have a plan that at least after 2 years from the grant, you expect a response from the grantee. And third, I was also aware that there were very few statistics, and you kind of explained why that happened. But one grantee said, well, we lost the program because we couldn't fund it. And another one said, well, the people were very happy, but that's it. You know, and I don't want to be hard-hearted, but it's nice to feel warm and fuzzy about what we've done. But we ought to have some objective criteria about what has happened. So I'll leave it with that.
Oh, thank you, David. I'm glad you asked that question because I want to clarify that. We do, from every single grant that we've made, it's due a year after we make the grant. They're 1-year grants. So we have made 68 grants over the last 30 years, and we have received a final report for every single one of those. It has a lot of detail in it, and it is in our files, and we can provide it to Catalyst members at any time. You know, it's pretty detailed stuff, as you can imagine. That was not all included in this video presentation. Of course, this was just, but yes, in fact, we do receive a lot more information that's in the weeds and a lot of data and numbers. And you know, for the Hartford Foundation to make a grant, we do require that. So
I may have missed it, but have you shared that with the membership?
No, we typically have not shared that with the membership, but we can. What we've typically done is invited the grantee to attend a meeting the following year and speak. But we're certainly happy going forward to share those final reports with all members if that's what, you know, we want to do. We're happy to do that. It's not, you know, we can do that. But to speak to your first question actually about who responded to this, we did not ask all 68 grantees from the past 30 years to respond to this video presentation project, because we know that to ask a small nonprofit to respond to a $5,000 grant, maybe from 10 or 15 years ago, is really a burden on them. So what we decided to look at the grantees from the last 10 years, and I sort of self-selected from those grantees, ones that I knew were still strong, healthy, had leadership, and could probably respond to our request. And that's how you got these 8 responses that were sort of arbitrary from the last 10 years. Grantees that received grants in the last 10 years too. And it's not that they didn't respond, it's that we did not ask all of them for the detail because that presentation could go on forever.
Thanks, Betty Ann. David, you have to put your hand down, unfortunately. It doesn't automatically go away. So once you're done, if you put your hand down, that would be great. Amanda, you are next up, and you're one of the stars of this. So I'm interested in your comments.
Well, thank you. This is, I'm so glad that we're all getting together to do this tonight. And I think that David's question and Betty Ann's response also helped us frame what we're doing here tonight, which is just to highlight some of the relevant points, but also to reassure that due diligence is being done by the foundation and to just, clarify that people who are interested, we really can take a deeper look if that is the case. But one of the things that came out in this for me, which I really appreciated, is when we talk about what's catalytic and what that means to us. I mean, there are a few things that jumped out at me that I appreciated because it gave different examples of what that can mean for organizations. So, for instance, in the one about the manufacturing, when it talked about how our grant helped connect them to new sources of funding because they were successful. That's very important in catalytic. The fact that Chrysalis helped find new work with their development of housing for veterans because they could find the work and what they were doing. And then also for COBA with their program development, some of the insights that they gained. The examples that we heard tonight, even if they were brief, really did show that broad, expansive nature of, the kinds of things that the organizations are benefiting from our grants. So I was really moved by that. And I think the foundation did a terrific job on the video. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Deborah, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Amanda, you covered a couple of the things that I was going to say, but I have a question too. Well, first of all, my favorite one, and it might be the concept of recency because it was the last one in the video, the Chrysalis Center. Thought that was really neat that we gave them the grant for employment, but then that led them to a bigger, more underlying discovery that housing was a challenge. And then they became successful with that. That's pretty cool. I think that's catalytic. But then my question is more around, we've given 68 grants. The foundation as a whole has obviously given way more than that. And I'm wondering if any analysis has been done that helps predict which types of grants are most likely to be successful. And I don't know if the volume is great enough to do that kind of analysis, but I would be curious. I mean, we do that in the corporate world all the time when we have like hundreds of thousands of things, right? Try to look at the data and see what's the sweet spot. And I'm curious if the foundation does anything like that. And again, I don't expect with 68 grants, you're going to have enough data to kind of do that because they're all so different. But just in general, is there work that gets done on that?
Well, interesting that you bring that up, Debbie, because I think that is part of our conversation tonight about how we might do more of that. The foundation with
Oh,
other
you're cutting
major
out again.
Sorry.
That's not your fault.
The foundation does do a lot of that on their own in terms of our strategic grant making. For Catalyst, we have not done that. And of course, because this is a donor cycle, it's a little bit different because our grants are all over the place and they're not necessarily around one strategy. They might be small, they might be large. So that's part of our conversation tonight, but we have not done that in the past with Catalyst grants.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. And Bob, that's a perfect segue into you, but I'm not going to use it yet because I want to get all of these other questions. But talk about teeing you up. That you couldn't get a better one than that. Iris, if you have a question or a comment. You got to unmute, Iris, and we can't see you, so I don't even know what you're doing.
Oh, okay. Now I'm unmuted. My reaction was really that this was a very feel-good experience to watch as I had participated in developing the approvals for a number of these grants. And it is interesting to see what evolved from them. And that, in fact, is the purpose of a catalytic experience. You go to somewhere new and different out of what you've done. And that's quite heartening. But I'd like to know more about where things have gone. We don't give out a gigantic sum of money, although sometimes it sounds like it is or it feels like it is. But these small bits really do seem to make a difference a lot of the time. But thank you to the folks who were instrumental in this. Terry, you're out of contact. No sound.
I turned myself off. So, okay. So Iris, if you could you and Carol could put your hands down, that would
Wait,
be lovely.
wait a minute, Terry. Carol hasn't spoken yet.
Carol, oh, she hasn't. Oh, oops. Oh, it's Deborah that was there. Okay, so how did Carol get in front of Iris? It's on my screen. I don't know. Technology is wonderful. Carol, if you have something that you want to say, maybe I better get you in now before I mess it up even worse.
Okay, what I was going to say, it was a lot like what Debbie said. I was curious, when you get the analytic data 2 years after the recipients have worked on their program, how do you use that data that you get?
Typically, we have not really used it, to be honest with you. We file the report and we refer to it over time. If there are inconsistencies or questions about how they use the money, we follow up with them and make sure that it's used in the way that it was intended to be used. There have been times, for example, there was a grant we gave in November, right before COVID hit. And the organization came back to us in March and said, we're not able to run this program right now because of COVID. Can we get an extension? So we had a discussion with them about that. But in terms of using the data to show trends or impact over time, we have not done that with the Catalyst Endowment Fund before.
Okay, but you've done it with other programs?
Well, the Hartford Foundation does do it with a lot of their major grant making programs. Catalyst is a little different because it's a donor driven fund. So it doesn't kind of fit in the same, I guess the bottom line is we as Catalyst decide what we want to do with that data, to decide how we want to collect it and what we want to do with it, I guess is the answer. So yes, the foundation does do it with other grants, and we can certainly benefit from their knowledge. I've had conversations with our program officers over on that side of the hall about how we might think about doing it. Talk a bit more tonight.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. Ira, you've got your hand up and a comment.
Yes, I'm going to wear a different hat. I'm looking at us I've been an entrepreneur, and basically what we're running is an angel fund, if I can be so direct, even though at the end of the day, we're trying to do good in the community. And so all of us who belong to the Catalyst Fund are actually angel investors. And so angel investors like to put into things they hope will be successful, but they also know some aren't successful. So basically, we've had some great success with some of them. Some have merged, some have done other things. I go back to some of the statistics. I'm looking at this as a way of recruiting more members to join the Catalyst Fund, be it ours or the other two. I think the statistics, if you're thinking of an angel trying to reach young people or younger ones, me being an aging baby boomer, so anyway, but the Gen X, for example, they're so data driven about everything. So we say, okay, we invested $1.1 million, we've got 65, this is the amount of people who've been effective. And Betty, if you have all those statistics, give it to some MBA student who's going to UHA or UConn, break it all down as an investment, because I think future people going to be joining us are going to be thinking, okay, you put this money into this, even though there's a lot of intangibles. I'm not saying we're an investment fund, because angel investors are donors like us. And I always compared it that way. I said, gee, I hope the 50 grand will do something. I believe in what they're doing. We voted for it. We invested in it. So let's see where it goes. And sometimes it works fine. And sometimes these programs don't fan out. That's fine. So I see this as a recruiting tool to get more members to join Catalyst, particularly younger generations. So pulling those statistics together, of doing it, I think might help us out. So I look at this in terms of how can we market this versus just talking to the choir.
Excellent point. Thank you, Ira, and an interesting perspective.
Yeah, I know that's my oddball marketing Gemini brain functioning. But it's I'm always thinking, I'm always in a marketing mode. How can we market what we're doing?
We could use marketing. That's excellent. Deborah, you got another comment, and then I want to go to Bob.
Yeah, I was gonna say one of the same things that Ira did. I don't know if the foundation does this, but I think it would be really easy to get a summer intern from an MBA program who focuses on data analytics, and they could take all that data and see what patterns emerge from looking through it, and potentially even come up with a predictive model that says these are the drivers of success, and it could be, anything could pop, right? Like how many staff members do they have? How long has the organization been around? I mean, we don't know, because the data, that's what the analytics would carry to the top. So that's one thing. And then secondly, I love the idea of using it as a marketing tool. And if we do, I think it would have to be a heck of a lot shorter. 12 minutes is too long for a marketing recruiting video. But I love the idea too of a mix between the stats and the head and the heart, because there's different segments of people that are going to respond to different things. But I like it feels good and you're doing good, and here's the proof of it. Do you guys does the foundation hire summer interns or anything? Because I think that'd be a really fun project for a student, like an internship. Is that something that is generally done?
We do not typically. We might find a little money in the budget for a consultant, which could maybe be, multi-use for a summer intern, like you mentioned. So that's a great concept. I'll certainly follow up and
like a young person to lure the next generation in,
Yeah, and it does also occur to me that theoretically, actually, I don't know whether this is true or not, but we could direct part of our own grants to that, and I don't know what it would cost us, but that's something we could consider. Bob, I've been teeing you up all this time. The reason I've been teeing up Bob, and you're next, so is that we have been, and it's clear in our discussions tonight already that that we want some frameworks, or we'd like to have some frameworks sometime to do some analysis. And Bob, the steering committee has been talking about this as well, but Bob put together something and sent it out to a couple people today by email. So take it away, Bob, your idea of some frameworks and some thoughts.
Oh, sure. Thanks, Terry. First of all, I want to thank Tom for just a terrific video, putting together a lot of pieces and coming across. I think the notion of specifics and from the heart is one of the things I think we ought to keep together. I think one of the things we've been talking about within the committee, and I've been noodling on, is what an amazing source of data that we've gotten from 30 years of experience. And I've been thinking more about the types of programs that we've been funding, rather than the as has been suggested, the metrics of what defines sustainability, those kinds of things. I think that's important too, as Deb and others and Ira have suggested. But some of the things that I was wondering, if we could look back at all this data, not only the 10 years with selected stuff, but maybe some others, and kind of categorize them into the types of grants. And that might create a discussion about what is catalytic, what's effective, and then we could look at implementation. But some of the types, and I would encourage other people to add to this list or to comment on it or to rip it apart, to do whatever. I mean, I think, Terry, Amanda, and Betty Ann have really seen this as a way of rethinking after 30 years what makes something catalytic and what makes it worth our while. Some things that I just wrote down were things like training. I think one of the things we were, training people, training young women in manufacturing, those kinds of things. We do public education. I know sometimes back we've spent money on videos to get an issue out in front of people. There's been outright advocacy, things like lobbying. We've had new programs, something that hadn't been done before. We've had new programs to an expanded audience. We've had new programs to reach more people to do the same thing. We've had new programs to be a model for others. And we've had some that have done partnerships with others. And I think if we have some kind of rubric to look at the programs that we've done and to think about what has had an impact, the issue of defining what is success, what does success look like? I think that's a good exercise. And this is just a start. And I would invite the people on this session and in others that we add to that, because I think the committee through its leadership is committed to using this year to take a look at what we've done to celebrate the 30th year. I mean, that's a remarkable record. So anyway, those are some of the thoughts that that I had as to how to use the data. And I think either tonight or in the course of going forward, other comments would be great.
So along those lines, Chris put up his hand while you were talking, and I bet he has a comment for you.
So I've appreciated the opportunity to be able to participate in this program, and thank you, Tom, for putting together that video. That's very helpful, and I applaud those folks who are suggesting that we try to, be purposeful not only in selecting the organizations to support each year, but at the same time to try to do some evaluation of how good of a job did we do in selecting the organization to support, and can we glean from the data whether there may be certain areas where we feel like we might have a better chance of being successful. So I think that's really a step in the right direction. And one of the pieces that I've enjoyed is the opportunity to do site visits. I haven't been able to participate in each of them, but perhaps as we think about, part of our goal is education, and part of our goal is supporting organizations with catalytic grants. Perhaps it might be something where if Betty Ann were to circulate the annual report that the foundation receives, and then sometime after that, we would do a site visit just to talk with the people who are involved with the organization and ask them questions about what worked, what didn't work, follow up upon the grant. And we would also get more information about a better understanding of what it's like for that organization. So, for example, this is the year 2022. So we might go back to the organization that we supported in the year 2020. They've had an opportunity to use the funds, and so we could just talk with them, read their report, and then have an opportunity to talk with them about their thoughts about the grant and to get more information about the organization. And perhaps that's been done previously. So if it's already happened, I apologize, I missed it. But I do think trying to combine the evaluation with the site visits might be a worthwhile exercise.
Well, it certainly hasn't happened in the last couple of years. We haven't been able to do any site visits. So thank you for that idea, Chris. That's a very interesting idea. One of the things I'm hearing from more than one person is a hunger for data. And I'm sure that Betty Ann and others have noted that hunger. And data can come in a lot of different ways. Chris, as you point out, sometimes the data is what we see because we're there, as opposed to the statistics and other metrics. Not that I'm against statistics. I'm a big fan of data. All right, are there other comments or thoughts? Amy, I now can see you, so that's nice. Thank you for your participation in the in that wonderful video. So we
Sorry, I was
welcome you.
driving before.
Oh, well, it's lovely to see you, and thank you for your participation. David, you just raised your hand, a thought or a question. You got to unmute yourself.
Yep. Well, I was listening to Bob talk about analysis, and one of the things that I'm curious about, if we were going to go ahead and do it, is the success of the grants relative to the size of the organization getting the grant. Because, you know, some of the things that we'd have to deal with are smaller organizations don't always have the necessary infrastructure to be able to execute the grants that we've given them. So as we look at the analysis that we're talking about doing, there's lots of data there about the size of the organization, number of staff, size of budget, and stuff like that. And we always get that. So I would just suggest that to Bob in the work that he's doing. I think that would be helpful to us to understand how grants can be successful going forward. And that was my comment.
Okay, thanks, David. Excellent. Other comments or other thoughts? I will say one thing a thought that came to me as I was watching the video, that it's kind of simplistic, and I'm a little surprised I hadn't thought about it before, but it occurs to me that merely the fact that we're doing what we're doing can be catalytic for some of these nonprofit organizations, in the sense that because we're named Catalyst Fund, and because we ask for them to submit applications for a grant that is in some way catalytic, we may be inspiring even the ones that we don't give grants to be thinking in new and different ways. That's kind of a byproduct of our mission and our existence. Because as I was listening to the presentations we heard tonight, it did impress me that some of the things that we heard about being reported to us were new ideas from these organizations, or new programs, or something a little different. So I was kind of wondering even just the impact that we have simply because we're trying to be catalytic. I'm not sure you can fit that into, Bob, your categories necessarily, but I love your categories, and thank you for starting us in thinking about that direction, about where are the areas that we have thought to invest, and what kinds of activities. That's certainly one way to be thinking about how we make the decisions that we make. All right, other thoughts or thanks or anything? Okay, Amy. You got to unmute.
I just wanted to make, and I'm sorry again for kind of being late and being off camera and in and out a bit. I was driving and caught what I could of the discussion. And I really do appreciate the interest in data and statistics. But I do want to echo the sentiment that I think I'm hearing from some other people also, is that with smaller organizations and programs, sometimes it's hard to capture what folks do in a number, right? Because it's hard to say, we really focus on advocacy, and that could influence legislation or public policy. And it's hard to really put a number on what that means and what that looks like. It's one thing if you do direct services and you pass out turkeys and you can say 45 families, had a meal. But I do think it's sometimes hard to get a concept of how catalytic something is in terms of just a number when not everyone provides direct services. And to the last gentleman who spoke, I think it is important to see how many staff and the capacity that an organization has to deliver on something, right? I'm a part of a 2-woman show, and I'm proud to say that some of my data is equal to much larger organizations, but I'm in the community, we're bilingual, we provide services maybe in a different way that other people do. So sometimes numbers can be tricky. And I just want us to keep that in mind as we think about comparing or trying to sort of put our finger on what success looks like. And I'll just say finally that I think a Catalyst or any grant from the Hartford Foundation is an incredible opportunity for someone. And I think perhaps it was mentioned, I heard discussion about it being mentioned in the video, that can spark investment in a program or an organization from other philanthropic or public or private sources when they say, oh, wow, the Hartford Foundation is funding you. That's great. Maybe I'll invest too, because they really are thoughtful about where their investments go. So that's also sort of something that's really hard to kind of measure, but it is opportunity. So I just want us to keep that all in mind as we think about trying to kind of put our finger on what success or being catalytic looks like.
All right, thank you, Amy. That's I was. I will admit I'm thinking a little bit along the same lines. But one thing that Betty Ann and others, Tom and others, can take away from our conversation tonight is clearly that we have a hunger to know more about what's happened with the funds that we've invested, and we would like some rubrics, I think, or some categories. That seems clear from what people have been saying. Yeah, before I shoot off my mouth anymore, but I'll let Bob do it. So go ahead, Bob. And then Donna.
Yeah, I'm a lawyer. I shoot off my mouth all the time. So you got the mute button. But no, I just to follow up on Amy's notion, I think the foundation for a number of years has been telling the members about sustainability of potential grantees and of collaboration, that we've been asking that. So I think we're already doing that. How good a job we're doing is something that we ought to focus a little bit on. But I agree with Amy that data isn't I think we ought to do more data. I think we ought to do more conceptual thinking about kinds of things we're doing. And then there's some stuff that I think if the members want to do it, let's do it. I mean, there's some small stuff that, may go kaboom, and that's fine. I had some concerns about the boxing thing that we did a year or two ago, and that was great. I was really pleased to see that report. Look at what is happening to all these young women, and it's a different take on it. So, hurrah! So anyway, I just wanted to make the point that I think at least on some of the performance metrics, which I distinguish from sort of types of things we're doing, I think some of the stuff is there.
Thanks, Bob. Excellent. Donna?
I'm sorry, I had to cut out for a little bit, so this may have already been discussed.
Now you're cutting out because we can't hear you.
I'm listening to our conversation. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay. And I'm wondering if we could, in our assessment or learning what is catalytic, also invite feedback from organizations about what kind of grants would enable them catalytic. So some in our own mind might be thinking, oh, it needs to do this. But an organization might say to us, really, in order for us to impact the most change, these are the things that we know are important. So just that the learning comes from both sides, not only from the data and what we do, but also getting the feedback and the input from the organizations that are doing the hands-on work every day, either in social service or mentoring or advocacy, whatever that is.
Okay, thanks, Donna. I think that's an important perspective, sort of the classic 360 analysis or discussion vantage points. Other thoughts, other questions? We schedule ourselves for an hour and a half, but we don't have to go an hour and a half by any stretch of the imagination. Tom, you've got a comment, and that would be helpful.
Sure. I think based on what a lot of people have just been saying, I want to follow up with something, which is that the process of putting this video together was very enlightening for me, even working at the foundation. I know it's anecdotal, but even reading through the responses from all of these grantees, it was very valuable. And I learned a few things that I hadn't really, I guess, thought about, even though they seem simple. I think the biggest one is that creating partnerships or helping change processes or even creating programs or staff positions that kind of outlast the funds is something that came up from so many of the people who responded. And I don't know how we exactly measure that, but a lot of the opportunities came out of those partnerships. For example, the manufacturing grant from, I think, 2015 or maybe it was 2017 that received additional funds from Walmart and Deloitte. Part of the reason they got those additional funds is because through our grant, they were able to form 25 different partnerships that made them much more visible. So, you know, I'm not a data person, so I don't know how to quantify that, but creating those kind of partnerships and positions and things that sort of outlast the finite amount of grant money we can give out, I think is something we should consider.
Thanks, Tom. That's helpful insight that none of us would have, but you had to because you went through all of that stuff. So Donna, you can put your hand down. And Kathleen, you have a comment. So if you'd unmute.
Hi, good evening. So I just wanted to jump into the talk about data. I don't know why my video is not going on, but anyway, I'm here. So we have this conversation lots when we have in-person meetings, and we talk about, you know, are we going to truly be catalytic and be able to offer grant award to a smaller nonprofit that might not be able to do data collection. And I think the general consensus, you know, in the dozen or so years that I've been involved, is that we would rather look to any and all, even if they don't have the ability to collect meaningful data in their shop. And to Bob White's point about the boxing group, the data that they would ultimately show for, you know, positive outcomes would be 20 plus years down the road, which obviously they can't demonstrate to us a year or two after they receive the grant. So I just want to caution everyone, instead of being data focused, that kind of gets away a little bit from the sort of catalytic idea that we've been about.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you very much for that perspective. Iris, you have your hand up. You got to unmute. Yep.
I was just reflecting on the fact that we have very consciously not linked grants from one year to the next, even if there was a change of focus, except once, which was when we linked a grant to Interval House to take a look at what happened to victims of domestic violence when they were out of that situation. And then the following year took a look at what was the impact on their children and their needs, the children who had been witness to domestic violence, and what their needs were. And we haven't ever heard anything much about that. But I think sometimes it's useful to keep in mind that there may be a sequel that will be useful to consider in gathering or information or knowing whether what we were doing is bearing fruit. We see the tree, we don't see the fruit, I guess is what I'm saying.
That's a very interesting idea. Thank you for that, Iris. All right, I'm about ready to turn it back over to Betty Ann. I don't see Betty Ann.
Well,
don't see
I'm
her.
here. I just
Oh, there
turned
you are.
I turned my camera off, hoping I'll have better reception. Given my frustration with the computer tonight, I think we all will be happy to hear that we are planning to go back to in-person meetings for our April 28th first program of the 2022 year. We will also be taping it, and it will be available to people who are not interested in coming out in person, but yay for that. So you all are the first to hear tonight the announcement that our 2022 topic of study selected by Catalyst Endowment Fund members is the ABCs of mental health, managing the ripple effects of dual pandemics. And the idea is that we will look at the mental health of children and youth, and especially how they're impacted both by COVID and by racial equity issues. So there's a lot going on there. So we have our work cut out for us this year. And I hope you're holding the date of April 28th for our first program. We are going to be in person, but we don't know where yet. So stay tuned with that. In line with our topic announcement, though, I want to encourage all of you that are on Facebook to please become a part of the Facebook group that's called Giving Circles at the Hartford Foundation. And it's a group we created for members of all three Giving Circles, but it's a wonderful place to post links to articles or other things that you see that are relative to our topic of study, or to philanthropy in general that you might want to share with other members. So please seek that out. It's called Giving Circles at the Hartford Foundation, and follow along there and engage. Feel free to not only read things, but to post things. Listening to Bob White talk about some of the strategy that we're thinking about makes me think about when I first met Bob White about 15 years ago, when I first started working at the Hartford Foundation. And Bob was the chair of the Catalyst Endowment Fund at the time. And what that reminds me of is the longevity of our engagement here. That's one of the beautiful things about Catalyst, is how many of you have renewed your membership year after year after year and really become a part of the fabric of this work. So I want to thank everybody who's in that camp, but I just want to highlight that because Bob is speaking from a lot of experience. He's followed this work for a lot of years and considering what it means to be catalytic and what we want to do with our fund. So on that note, I want to remind everyone, if you have not yet renewed for this year, I invite you to renew at any time. Technically, you have until the grant making meeting to renew, but we love it if you renew earlier in the year just to make sure you don't miss any communications. You can certainly do that online. There's a link in the chat right now. If you want to do it online with a credit card, you can always mail a check. If you're not sure if you've renewed yet this year, feel free to send me an email and I'll check that for you. Let's see. Lastly, I guess my last comment was to remind you about April 28th. When you do receive the invitation for that program, please feel free to share it with people you know or people you think would be interested in learning more about Catalyst. The first meeting of the year, we welcome any guests who might want to join us in hopes that they'll also become engaged and want to be a part of the group. So when you do receive that, feel free to share it out there and tell the world the good news about the Catalyst Endowment Fund. I think that's all on my list tonight. I want to say thank you to all of you for being here and for being patient with our technology. And again, to Tom for putting together this video presentation. Not only is Tom a super communications staff person at the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, he's also a Catalyst member in his own right. So he also has dual interests. So I really appreciate all his work to this and your perspective, Tom. So Terry, I'll throw it back to you for any final thoughts or words.
I just want to thank everybody who did come to tonight's event for your thinking, for your participation, and for your input in all sorts of different ways. I love the catalytic nature of our Catalyst Foundation or Fund, and I love the fact that there are so many people with so many really, really brilliant thoughts that are willing to share and participate in this way. So I think we've got some good ideas to digest, and digestion is on my mind right at the moment because next up for me is dinner. And I'm again very grateful for everybody who came. So thank you all, and I hope to see everyone at our April meeting.